So we looked at this little demo a couple of weeks ago. This is a feature to allow you to restrict some tenants from having certain features, or to being allowed to enable certain features or certain themes, and then allow other tenants to have access to those features. So just updating it as we kind of talked about last couple of weeks ago. So using a feature called tenant profiles. So you can see here I'm on the default tenant, which is the only one that can actually set these profiles, obviously. And in the blog instance, we now have an optional box here to select a profile. And you'll see on the blog 1, I've got the restricted profile. On the blog 2, I've got no profile, which means that when we go to blog 1, we don't, in this case, have the admin templates that would normally be available. Whereas when we go to blog 2, we're allowed to use the admin templates feature. For some particular reason, I picked on templates because they're easy, because they have 2 strings that are reasonably common. So how these are configured is through a new feature which is only available on the default tenant, called tenant feature profiles, which is a feature in itself, so you don't have to use this. And then I've got 2 profiles here, the all profile, which just allows everything through, and in this case a restricted profile, where we can set the rules that we want to use. So it's an array here of the various rules. You can have as many as you like, and you can have the 2 different types of rules. So rule is, by default, we have an include and an exclude rule. You can extend those if you want to write your own. And we apply an expression. So it is based, the expression is always based on the feature name, but can include stars and also, so it's a simple pattern match. Rule system there, and we can then save that. And with any luck, if I refresh this page on the second blog, we'll probably have overridden the exclude. So what we did here is we excluded the admin templates, we excluded the agency theme, and then we decided to include all of the templates again, because why not? And that's now back available. So that's the short version of the demo. I'll take some questions on that, and then there is another part of it that I wanted to talk about, which is the autocomplete we've got here from the Monaco editor.
What's the initial list? Empty or full?
Empty.
So you don't need to exclude them.
So if you add a new one, it's just empty.
No, what I mean is that if you execute that, what's the result? Everything or
everything?
None?
Everything.
So it's full. The default is all profiles. All features. That's what I mean. So then that's why you start by excluding stuff. And if you want to clear, we need to say exclude star, and then you can start including. If you want to be opt-in, okay.
Yeah. So that would be appropriate. Exclude everything, and then it would just be include. Probably slightly more complicated to build up something where you exclude everything, but the pattern matching is quite useful depending on how you name your modules. If you have like some modules that are for specific customers or for specific tenants, then you can exclude all the other ones.
And then you said that you were about to talk about these extensions to the Tenant editor. Was it harder to implement what you're about to show, or to have a list of add, and 2 colons, exclude expression, rule expression, with a drop down and a string?
I'm going to go with yes and no. It was much easier to implement the the Monaco editor here, but what I've added to this one as well, just because I wanted to experiment with it, is a JSON schema, which I can show in the browser here. So I add a JSON schema here, which is dynamically built.
Oh.
And this
the
is
raw JSON schema there, and not a URL to a schema. Interesting.
So it's not a URL at this particular point because it's just thrown in via a data attribute, but it's what gives you the whole options here. Here, just by defining that this here, for example, is an enum. But actually, technically in the code, it's not an enum. It's some options that you can register to if you want to register your own rules. So this could be quite an interesting way to, and I experimented with it because I used NJSON schema to build it up. Quite an interesting way to build up a set of schemas for our recipes and for content items, so that we could actually have functionality like this inside the workflow editors and recipe step editors and other places that we kind of use JSON. So I wanted to have a little bit of a talk about that, because pretty much all of the code that builds up this schema is very similar to a module that I talked about a long time ago, which is an Open API module that I do, which generates dynamic schemas for content items, or content types, sorry, which then produces a Swagger document, and this Swagger document, the schema inside this, jump past all the controllers and onto the actual content types, maps directly to a JSON schema, so you can literally cut and paste this and put it into the Monaco as a schema, or potentially add an endpoint via a piece of middleware or a controller, so that you could just specify which content type you were looking at and load it up into the Monaco editor and have kind of full IntelliSense out of it, if that makes sense.
Can you open the NJSON schema GitHub repository?
I don't know if that PR has been merged.
Pull request 1346.
Is it there, or was it on NSWAG?
NJSON schema.
This one.
Yeah.
1346.
We should merge it. And then
We should merge it.
Look at the benchmark. So Marco, who is a contributor on Gene, Fluid, and improving all the perf, he decided to create a PR to migrate NJSON schema from .liquid to Fluid because it's much faster. Look at the perf numbers. So NJSON schema can generate code, and like you see, generating the C# code is minus 94%. TypeScript minus 97% time, just by switching, and even in allocation, it's crazy. So the only thing that blocks this PR, I think, is that it's compliant with Liquid, and .liquid is not compliant with Liquid. So it means that some templates would have to be fixed to work with Fluid. It's kind of an issue, I think.
I think it will probably take at some point, and the guys seem pretty keen on it.
Yeah. And that's the first step before also doing the same thing in Swagger and whatever.
Yes. Now the NJSON schema that I'm referencing here doesn't actually take the reference to .liquid because it's not the code generation
I see.
package.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Otherwise, we would have we would have that kind of issue. But this particular package, they're split into varieties of packages, which is good. Just has the Newton soft reference and the motion for the reflection.
Still using Newton soft, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Which is good for us because we're still using Newton soft.
Mm-hmm. I started using the document object model, the JSON document object model of the system text JSON yesterday actually. It's read-only, but I think it's also right on .NET 6. I haven't checked, but I asked David and he said yes last time I asked, so but we can at least read with the JObject of system text JSON now in .NET 5. That's interesting. Just different topic. Okay, good. Anything else?
So are you happy with the reference to NJC schema if I do that for this? Because we get localization and the rules, and it's just convenient to do it.
What happens if you create a tenant from or via the API? Will it use the none profile?
So on the API calls, you can specify a profile if you want to, or you can leave it empty, and empty is none.
Okay, great.
And the workflow features the same. Yeah.
So we need to go one step further, and I will give you some module ID thing. Can you open VS Code? On your PC. Can you open the settings, the user settings? If you do Control-Shift-P and go to settings. User settings.
I'm gonna have the wrong
Control-Shift-P and type settings and open the user settings. Oh, there is a control dot maybe. Control dot might do that already. Control T. What is doing that? I'm
only going to remember the Mac shortcuts at this point in the game.
So that's not what I want to see.
Which settings did you actually want to see?
I want to see the settings. I always get to this screen by mistake, and now I can't get it. So because I usually do. Yeah, this one. Good. I don't know how you got that, but that's good. So you see the sections on the left, and you see the editors on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you see here is a JSON document.
Yeah,
it's one JSON document, but based on the schema, it's able to render the UI. And even the lists. So it's like Orchard, right, for content management, but where you don't have to, well, it's kind of the same thing, like they have editors for each type of field or entries in the JSON document. And there are like very simple editors, like integers, list,
text, string.
Yeah, but that's interesting. That's something that will be even better than the JSON editor itself when you have a schema to be able to build a UI like this. And maybe there's a way to extract their logic to do that, because it's all on the client side, it's all JavaScript, and that will work also for us because you would edit the JSON on the client side, and when you submit, it submits the JSON. So it's like a different editor than Monaco editor, right? When you edit JSON. And
yeah, it is, because you're always working with JSON, and what you want to be able to do is post back as JSON at the moment. We're posting back as forms. You know, so
and maybe if you can open the two windows side by side, maybe actually the the changes are live. I'm not sure if it's doable. And if it was, I will not try it. Like the default settings of JSON, or is that the file that is the thing?
So let's find accessible.
Or it's blue because it's changed. How do you say save? If you save on the right, how do you say? Control S?
Oh, I would have thought it just saved, to be honest.
It didn't save, it's blue. Control S. Can you type Control S?
No, it's not doing it.
At the bottom, maybe? How do you save that?
I normally just edit the JSON.
That's weird, but how?
Maybe when you close it? No. See,
Maybe it's not the maybe it's not the same file. I don't know.
Maybe this is just the default settings file.
Well,
Yeah.
but that looks great, right? You have the description, you have the type. It's like our hint or label, and then based on the type, you have different editors. So that's super nice. And then the structure of the file is in the index on the left. So it looks super nice when you have, I mean, to provide editor like this for JSON. It's like what we are doing for our JSON content item with custom editors when we did a content item, actually.
Yeah, it's just a way of driving a UI from metadata, from JSON metadata.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's something that would be great for our JSON documents. Some could say, yeah, let's do that for everything. Everything on the client side, everything in JSON and with JSON schema, and then when you just edit the content types, you are just actually editing the schema. Then yeah. So
yeah, we'll all get really good at writing YAML and JSON. But
cool. Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
so that's where we're at
Thank
with
you.
that. In terms of other PRs, I am considering whether or not we can, whether we should do some middleware or a controller to actually put these schemas kind of live, so that you could actually just feed into them from various editors. So
yeah, I believe it can be static files in the root of a module and then referenced by the API or something like that, like a resource.
yeah, I mean, we could do static files for some of them, but content types, for example, aren't static, and recipes would change depending on which features are available, because you want to collect the whole schema.
Oh, I see. So the idea is to be to generate the schema based on the content type definition. I see.
Yeah, which is what I do over here with this one, where it just generates the content type definitions based off all the different bits.
Okay, I missed this point. Sorry.
So we can take those and use them in, say, a workflow here where wanting to do one of the created content events or any of the other kind of content events, or you want to know the shape of the schema. So the kind of thing that we could put here, not this one, so task, content, so you could actually have autocomplete here, where you're actually seeing what parts are available on this particular, menu content type or blog content type. blog post content type, which is kind of the thing that people struggle with a lot when they're starting out on Orchard, I suppose.
Yes.
So if we had an endpoint which we could call and get these definitions, then
yeah, because you can reference other schema from a schema, right? And then when you have a field of a type, you can say, oh, the source for this type is there, and it's a dynamic API that will generate the thing for this type. Yeah.
Reference here, which says that it's part of the content item, and the types, when you get further down into the types, the ag part, it's takes any of the content items in its items array. So yeah, you can continue to reference. So they will just become parts of the schema, or parts of the definition schema.
Might be hard because then you need to have all your fields and parts expose the schema. Unless it's reflection based.
Well, it's reflection. Yeah, I mean it is reflection based. So, this is literally all dynamic here. There's all the schemas here, and that's just reflection based because I use the in JSON. So when the schema is processing, I generate a default content field one, and then I start adding properties to it, or a default content item, content part, and then go through the registered options, generate for that scheme, then generate for that particular type, and cache it afterwards.
So let's rebuild the content type definition with JSON schema. It has everything, it might be better, and then you can generate the UI dynamically, even if it's also pluggable, all on the client side. Let's do everything in JavaScript and call it and run it on Node and call it Descent. So, okay.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
cool. So ideas.
Thank you.